Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling page. Today we're going to do a really simple page called Mindful Mics, and it's why I art journal. So the day I was doing this, I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do something. So I went for the easiest option. I've got this great stencil. I think it's a dilution stencil. I think it's Martha's mat, but I could be mistaken. I've just clipped it onto the top so it doesn't move around, drawn around the circles, and all I'm doing is filling in the circles with different patterns. So any of you out there who love Zentangling, this is a really fun thing to do. I have a few stock standard patterns I tend to go to, those dots, the scallop edges, straight lines, crisscross or cross hatching, just what you tend to do all the time. So I've got this chevron pattern happening as well, and it's really funny when you do this, you think, oh yeah, I know lots of patterns, and then you get to sort of doing 4 of them, it's like, oh, how many patterns do I know? So what I did was I did 8 different patterns and then I repeated them. But this is a great way, it's a good sampler page to have in your journal of different patterns you can do. I highly recommend going into YouTube and looking up Zentangles or Zentangling, and you'll have lots of patterns there that you can follow and practice as well. So just doing short, sharp little patterns like this is really, really handy because you can sort of see how they look, see which ones you like doing, which ones give you the effect you want. You can see that I had another one with circles up the top, but I've done it in different ways. I had random circles, that one's more concentric circles. So you could maybe do a whole page with patterns using circles. This is the same scallop pattern, but instead of doing lots of them in different ways, just doing one big one. Vary up what you've got. The cross hatch pattern that I had in there was using that chevron pattern, but using that as a cross hatch. So I've got these weird and wonky lines, whereas this cross hatch is using straight lines. So I'm using all the patterns I had in the line above, but I'm using them in a different way, and that can be really fun to sort of think outside the box a little bit, and how can I change this to look different. When I got to this stage, I was like, oh, I'm not sure what I want to do. So I decided to repeat the patterns again in the different circles. So mix it up a little bit so they're all mixed up, but continue it in a different way. And again, it's a good way to practice what you're doing. So you've done it once, can you do it again? Can you make it look the same again? And that can sometimes be a little bit challenging as well. So it is really good to practice your hand. I suppose the reason why it's called Mindful Mics is this is something, once you get into the habit of it, it can be really, really relaxing, particularly when you've taken out the stress of what pattern do I do next. So when I got to this stage, when I had 8 patterns on my sheet that I could repeat again, I could turn my brain off basically, and I could just let my hand do the work. And on this day, that's what I needed to do. I just needed to make. I didn't need to think about it. I just needed to keep my hand busy. I needed to shut off my brain. I needed to stop making decisions, and this is what I ended up with. And I was really sort of happy with how it worked out. It's also really good working in a black journal like this, in the fact that you've got that real high contrast between your black and white. I get a lot of questions about my white pens that I use. I know people have their own personal favourites of white pens. This is mine. It's the PC1M bullet point fine tip pen. Don't get the metal tipped ones, get the bullet point ones. You can still get a really fine line with them. You do need to shake it well to begin. To be honest, I think because I use my pen so often, I've never had an issue, particularly with this finer one where it hasn't been very opaque. I do know some people really struggle with the opacity of them and they are a bit watery. I think that's just because the paint hasn't been mixed enough. So give it a really, really good shake. Make sure the lid is on, though. I was going to call it the helmet. The lid is on firmly, otherwise you will get splatter everywhere. So just be aware of that. I know some people have great success with the Signo gel pens. That's fantastic if you do. I really struggle with them. I find that they clog up on me. I've got a feeling it's because I do a lot of mixed media, and acrylic paint is going to go over the top of acrylic paint and a lot of other things, whereas the gel pens work really well on a page like this. But if you're going to try and put it over the top of, say, the page next door to this, in that hair, where I know it's got layers of tissue paper and Stabilo All Pencil and gel medium and a little bit of paint on it, it's probably going to start doing weird and wonderful things. So use what works for you. Use what works best for you, but for me it's this pen. I find I get a lot of success out of it. So once I finished, now I'm going back in. I decided to fill in the center spaces because I was having so much fun, but I didn't want to think of more patterns, so I just used the shape of the little diamondy thing and filled it in, just going in concentric diamonds going into the center, which I really like that line work. So it's a really, really simple way to do this. You don't have to use circles. You could do squares. You could draw up your own grids. Use washi tape to draw up your grids and draw in between. But just have a go at drawing different patterns and see how it works for you. When I got to the end, I could have left this as it was. I decided I wanted to put some collage over the top just to sort of make it a page, so to speak, but in actual fact it sort of worked out quite nicely on its own. I think it would have looked more finished if I just wanted to leave it as is, if I'd continued that diamond pattern off the edge, so I didn't have that border. It did finish it off slightly by putting the little stitched lines around the circles, but I think from my eye, for it to be completely finished, it would be finishing off that diamond pattern and not having those blank edges with all the white or all the black in them. So once I'd finished doing that, I thought I would put some collage on. I thought I would go for this collage doll from Natalie May, but I just didn't like, there wasn't enough contrast in it. Then I found this one, which again I really liked, but it was now too black and wasn't quite right. The paper doll wasn't right. That was too bright. So all these bits and pieces just wasn't quite working. And I came across this one, which kind of summed up what I was doing. It wasn't quite right. It is floating in the middle of the air, which, you know, is something I usually detest. But it kind of works. It still had all that pattern work. It had some of the circular things. But the thing I think I really liked about it, it had that little quote in it. It said, "Live mindfully," which really summed up what I was doing on this page. I think the image came from a Flow magazine. I could be mistaken. It could be from a Daphne's Diary or something like that. But it was just the perfect image to put on this page. So I hope you have a go at doing some mindful mark making. It's a great way to swatch out your patterns and have a little bit of a pattern bank in your journal. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.